Hi Singletrackers, Mark here. I'm in Leeds Urban Bike Park in Leeds, and I'm here to show you this. This is the all-new Santa Cruz Tallboy 4, which I'm not sure isn't a music genre. Oh, a flip chip. Yeah, so I've been messing around on this bike all day. Which, haha, sorry about that. Got any questions, then stick them down below in the comments and I'll do my very best to ask them. Ask them, I'll answer them. So first I'm going to run you through some of the changes that have been made to this bike this year, and then I'm going to take you through some of my opinions of this bike, having ridden it for a few days. Let's start with the main features. The Tallboy is Santa Cruz's full suspension XE bike. It's a 29er, and this model here is the almost top of the line CC model in size medium. We have a full carbon frame with a brand mixing combo of a Fox shock and RockShox Pike Select Plus fork at the front. The shock gives 120mm of travel at the back, and the fork gives us 130mm at the front. We have SRAM X01 shifting with SRAM G2 brakes featuring easy to use reach and bike point adjustment. There's a RockShox reverb dropper post and Santa Cruz Reserve 27 wheels. Now don't let that number confuse you. These are 29er wheels and the 27 is referring to the rim width. That's the feature list, but how has this model evolved from last year's design? We're here on the new Santa Cruz Tallboy 4, which Santa Cruz have called Extreme Country in their press release, which I'm not sure isn't a music genre. So what's different about this year's Tallboy? Well, there is a whopping 65.5 degree head angle, which for a cross-country bike is pretty slack, and that geometry can actually be adjusted. There is a flip chip down by the bottom linkage on the suspension, which can actually lower the bottom bracket and slacken the head angle further by, well, not only 0.2 of a degrees, but hey, that's pretty cool. Other major change, the rear dropout can also be flipped to lengthen the chainstay. So if you want more stability at speed, you can make it longer. If you want that sort of agile feel of a shorter chainstay, you can keep it shorter. Whew. Genre bending was also another term coined in the press release, which is an interesting turn of phrase. Anyway, those are fairly significant changes. But the biggest one is this rear suspension. For a start, it's 10mm longer than last year, but more crucially, it now uses Santa Cruz's VPP suspension system. So VPP, what's it all about? Well, it stands for virtual pivot point. And essentially what it does is it separates the rear triangle of the bike from the main triangle. There are no direct connections. Instead, both the top and the bottom of the rear triangle are connected by two linkages. And these linkages counter-rotate, and the intention is to tune these linkages to eliminate certain characteristics from the suspension that as a rider you don't want. In this case, those linkages have been tuned to try and ensure that the suspension action is the same and consistent whether or not you're pedaling, sat down, stood up or going down. So on the Tallboy 4, the suspension is designed to eliminate all the rider's pedaling input from the suspension, which means that on the climbs it doesn't stiffen up, which means you retain all that traction, and on the descents it stays nice and plush. It just gives a very consistent feel to the suspension no matter what you're doing. And I have to say, although I've only been riding this bike for a few days, it all does seem to add up, and it does seem to work. It's not like any cross-country bike I've ridden before. If I may quote further from the Santa Cruz press release, they did say that this bike makes you want to sprint up the climbs. Now I can confidently admit right now I have never in my life wanted to sprint up a climb.
Not even if you were chasing someone?
No. Maybe if there was someone at the top with a pie.
Or a pint.
Or a pint. Or both. But I have to say, you can tell where they get that from, the efficiency of this bike on the climbs. I'm not going to sprint up a climb, but if I was the sort of person who had a personal best on some uphill Strava segments, I reckon I would be breaking those personal bests with this bike. So how about some do's and don't likes about this bike? Well, my early impressions are very positive. However, the low mounting of this shock is so low, it's really hard to actually bring your fingers around when you're riding and actually activate it. Unless you've got gorilla arms, you'll be absolutely fine. What about the shock, setting it up? Right, this is a bit of a, this is a bit faffy. As you can see, the shock is actually mounted through the frame, which kind of hides the whole stroke area of the shock. I can't even really get my fingers in here to get hold of the rubber ring to set up the sag, and the sag settings are really quite specific. Because of the short nature of this shock, Santa Cruz recommend that the sag setting be somewhere between, get this, 11mm and 13mm. Now that's all fine and dandy if you can get a ruler in there and measure it. I can't even see where the rubber ring is, so that's a little faffy. Now, I don't ride bikes for the climbs. I'm a normal person, you see. I ride up so that I can ride down the other side, but this bike really does take the sting out of the climbs. It's comfortable and you can really feel that suspension working for you, no matter what you're doing with your riding style to try and spoil things. But this bike is not just a climber. It's almost a cliche to say that it feels like a bigger bike, but a cliche only becomes a cliche if it's true. Overall then, calling this bike an XE bike may put off some prospective riders who I think would actually love it. It's a great bike for those all-day rides and big days out. It's comfortable and very efficient. It's not going to get you king of the mountains, but it'll probably improve your personal bests, both on the climb and the descents. Look, here's the thing. If you bought yourself one of last year's Santa Cruz Tallboys, I'm afraid that this version is a lot more than just cosmetic upgrades. This is a completely different bike. Sorry about that. How about prices? This is the almost top of the line version, so this one is going to set you back around about £7,200. At this early stage in the launch, we haven't been given the exact UK prices yet, but there is going to be an alloy version of this bike that will retail for around about £3,000 as a complete bike. So we've got a good range of prices going on there. Thanks for watching, guys, and for more info on this bike and the rest of the Tallboy range, then go and check out our reports online at singletrackworld.com. If you've got any questions at all, stick them down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Until next time, guys, cheers. Haha.